The distant thunder of hooves against dusty earth was all Lily Anderson could hear as she trudged the final mile toward what she hoped would be salvation. Her legs trembled beneath her, weakened by 3 days of minimal food and water, the merciless June sun of 1873 beating down on her travel-worn body. The small ranch house that appeared on the horizon felt like a mirage too good to be true after her harrowing journey across the Arizona Territory, following her husband's brutal murder by bandits who'd taken everything but the clothes on her back and her wedding ring. As Lily approached the modest wooden porch, black spots danced before her eyes. Her parched lips moved in silent prayer that whoever lived here would show mercy to a desperate widow. The last thing she remembered was the creak of the first porch step before her world went dark. Cade Everett had just finished mending a tear in his work gloves when he heard the thud. Setting aside his needle and thread, the 32-year-old rancher approached the door with caution. Life on the frontier had taught him that unexpected visitors could mean trouble. What he found instead was a woman, unconscious and clearly near death, crumpled on his porch like a discarded rag doll. "Dear God," he muttered, immediately dropping to his knees beside her. Her skin burned with fever beneath his calloused fingers. Without hesitation, Cade scooped her into his arms, noticing how alarmingly light she felt, and carried her inside. His bachelor's quarters weren't much a 2-room cabin he'd built himself after arriving in Arizona 5 years earlier with nothing but determination and the skills he'd learned working cattle drives in Texas. He laid the woman gently on his bed, the only proper piece of furniture he owned aside from a table and 2 chairs. The woman moaned softly as he dampened a cloth and placed it on her forehead. Cade studied her face. She was young, perhaps mid-20s, with features that might have been beautiful if not ravaged by exhaustion and exposure. Her clothes were dusty but of decent quality, and he noticed a simple gold band on her left hand. A married woman then, which begged the question. Where was her husband? For 3 days, Cade barely left her side. He spooned water and broth between her cracked lips, changed the cool compresses on her forehead, and slept in a bedroll on the floor. When she finally opened her eyes the color of summer sage, he felt a curious relief that went beyond basic human compassion. "Where am I?" Her voice was barely audible, rough from disuse. "My ranch about 15 miles east of Tucson," Cade replied, offering her water. "You collapsed on my porch 3 days ago," she drank greedily before falling back against the pillow. "I'm Lily Anderson, my husband." Her voice broke and tears welled in those remarkable eyes. "No need to explain now, Mrs. Anderson. You need rest. Please," she whispered, "call me Lily. And thank you for saving my life, Mr. Everett, Cade Everett." He adjusted the blanket around her shoulders. "And you're welcome, Lily." As she drifted back to sleep, Cade found himself studying her left hand, that simple gold band catching the afternoon light. He pushed away the peculiar twinge of disappointment. This woman was someone's wife, and decency demanded he help her find her way back to her husband, regardless of whatever unexpected feelings might be stirring in his long-dormant heart. Over the next week, as Lily regained her strength, she shared her story. Her husband Thomas had been a shopkeeper in Denver. They'd sold everything to stake a claim near Tucson, having heard tales of opportunity in the Arizona Territory. But 3 days into their journey, bandits had attacked their wagon. Thomas tried to fight them off, she explained one evening as they sat at Cade's table, sharing a simple supper of beans and cornbread. "He told me to run. I hid in a ravine and watched them shoot him. They took everything: our wagon, our supplies, our money, all our dreams." Her voice trembled, but she continued. "I walked for days before finding your ranch." Cade listened, feeling a mixture of sympathy and quiet rage at what she'd endured. "I'm sorry for your loss, Lily. No one should suffer such a fate." "I have nothing left," she admitted, her gaze dropping to her plate. "No family back east, no money, nowhere to go." Cade cleared his throat. "You can stay here until you're fully recovered and decide what to do next. It isn't much, but you'll be safe." The grateful smile she offered him caused an unexpected warmth to spread through his chest. "You're a good man, Mr. Everett, Cade," he corrected gently. "If you're to stay here, you might as well use my given name." As days turned to weeks, Lily's presence transformed Cade's sparse homestead. Though still recovering from her ordeal, she insisted on earning her keep. Soon, the cabin that had been merely functional became something approaching a home. She found wildflowers to brighten the table, figured out how to make his coffee taste less like saddle leather, and even mended his shirts with stitches far neater than his own crude handiwork. For his part, Cade found himself lingering over breakfast, making excuses to return to the cabin for midday meals rather than eating jerky in the saddle as had been his habit. He began bringing back small treasures from his rides, a particularly beautiful stone, a book from the general store in town, a length of pretty calico when he sold some cattle. "You needn't bring me gifts," Lily protested when he presented her with the fabric. "It's not charity," Cade replied, suddenly embarrassed. "Just thought you might like something other than my old shirts to wear." The dress she fashioned from that calico transformed her in Cade's eyes. No longer merely a woman in need, but a remarkably beautiful one who brought lightness to his days. He found himself watching her as she hung laundry, the Arizona sun catching in her auburn hair, and felt an uncomfortable awareness that his feelings were straying far from neighborly charity. One evening, as summer faded toward autumn, Lily joined Cade on the porch after supper. They often sat together this way, watching the spectacular desert sunset paint the sky in impossible colors. "I should be moving on soon," she said quietly, breaking their comfortable silence. Cade felt his chest tighten. "You're welcome to stay as long as you need. I've imposed on your kindness for nearly 2 months. She twisted her wedding band, a habit he'd noticed whenever she was anxious. "People in town are starting to talk." It was true. On his last visit to Tucson, he'd endured knowing looks and none too subtle questions about the widow woman staying at his ranch. In a place where news traveled faster than dust storms, their living arrangement had become the subject of speculation. "Let them talk," Cade said more harshly than he intended. "Isn't proper, and you know it." She turned to face him, her expression troubled in the fading light. "You've been nothing but honorable, and I won't have your reputation tarnished because of me. Where will you go?" He asked, unable to imagine returning to his solitary existence after these weeks of her company. "Tucson, perhaps. I can seek employment as a seamstress or maybe a school teacher." The thought of Lily living alone in town, vulnerable to the hardships and dangers that befell unprotected women in frontier settlements, made Cade's stomach knot. Before he could consider the implications, words tumbled from his mouth. "Marry me." Lily's eyes widened in shock. "I beg your pardon." Cade stood, suddenly restless, and gripped the porch railing. "I'm proposing marriage, Lily. A practical arrangement. You need security, and He hesitated, unwilling to admit how much he'd come to need her presence. "I could use help with the ranch." "A marriage of convenience," she said flatly. "Yes." Then, more honestly, "No, not entirely." He turned to find her studying him intently, those sage eyes searching his face. "Cade, I'm still mourning Thomas. I know that. I respect it." He stepped closer, willing her to understand what he was struggling to articulate. "But I've grown to care for you, Lily. More than I expected to care for anyone again." The silence between them stretched, filled only with the evening sounds of cicadas and distant coyotes. "I need time," she finally said. "Take all the time you need." He nodded, relief and anxiety warring within him. At least it wasn't an outright rejection. That night, Cade lay on his bedroll on the floor of the main room, staring at the ceiling, mentally cursing his impulsiveness. He'd likely ruined the easy companionship they'd developed. Worse, he might have driven her away entirely. Morning came, and with it, the awkwardness he'd feared. Lily was quiet as she prepared breakfast, avoiding his gaze. Cade ate quickly, eager to escape to his chores. As he reached for his hat, she finally spoke. "If we were to marry," she said carefully, "it would be a true marriage, not just An arrangement on paper, Cade froze, his hat halfway to his head. I wouldn't expect anything you weren't ready to give, Lily. She nodded, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. And if I were never ready, the question stung, but he met her gaze steadily. Then that would be how it is. I'm offering you my name, my protection, and my respect, the rest. He shrugged. That's up to you. Lily moved to the window, her back to him. Thomas and I were married for 3 years. He was a good husband, but there was never. She paused, seeming to search for words. There was affection, but not passion. I sometimes wondered if there was something lacking in me. The vulnerability in her admission made Cade's heart ache. He crossed the room and gently turned her to face him. There is nothing lacking in you, Lily Anderson, nothing at all. Something shifted in her expression, a softening around her eyes. I'll think about your offer, truly think about it. It was all he could ask for. The following days passed in a strange limbo. They continued their routine, Cade tending the cattle and ranch work, Lily managing the household tasks, but an electric awareness hummed between them. Cade was careful not to press, giving her the space she needed, even as every day without an answer tested his patience. A week after his proposal, Lily accompanied him into Tucson for supplies. It was her first trip to town since arriving at his ranch, and Cade noticed how she straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin as they approached the bustling settlement. At the general store, Lily selected necessities with careful consideration while Cade settled his monthly account with the proprietor, Walt Jenkins. So this is the widow lady folks been talking about, Walt said, not bothering to lower his voice as he eyed Lily across the store. Mrs. Anderson, Cade corrected stiffly. Mighty peculiar arrangement you two have, Walt continued, counting out Cade's change. Living together unmarried and all. My arrangements are my business, Walt. Cade's tone carried a warning that the older man either missed or chose to ignore. Just saying, a decent woman wouldn't be staying with a bachelor unless Cade's hand shot out, gripping Walt's shirt front. Finish that thought and you'll be picking your teeth up off this floor. The store fell silent, all eyes turning to them. Cade became aware of Lily standing nearby, her face pale but composed. Cade, she said quietly, placing a gentle hand on his arm. Please let him go. Reluctantly, Cade released the shopkeeper, who straightened his shirt with an indignant huff. I apologize for the disturbance, Mr. Jenkins, Lily said with dignity that made Cade's chest swell with admiration. Please add these items to Mr. Everett's account. We'll be leaving now. Outside, Cade helped her into the wagon, his movements stiff with lingering anger. I'm sorry you had to witness that. You were defending my honor, she replied, arranging her skirts. Though perhaps a bit dramatically, Cade glanced at her, surprised to see a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Still, I shouldn't have lost my temper. Walt Jenkins isn't the first to judge me, and he won't be the last. She sighed, her smile fading. But he's right about one thing: our situation is unconventional. They rode in silence for several miles, the tension between them building until Lily finally spoke again. Yes, she said simply. Cade pulled the wagon to a halt, turning to face her. Yes, I'll marry you. Her eyes met his, clear and certain. Not because of what people think, but because I've come to care for you too, Cade, more than I thought possible after Thomas. Joy surged through him, but he tempered it with caution. Are you sure? I don't want you agreeing out of obligation, or I'm sure, she interrupted, reaching for his hand. I want to build a life here with you. Cade lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles just above her wedding band. We'll need to get you a new ring. Lily glanced down at Thomas's ring, then slowly slipped it off, tucking it into her pocket. A new beginning deserves new symbols, she agreed softly. They were married 2 weeks later by the circuit preacher who happened through Tucson, a simple ceremony with only a few neighbors as witnesses. Lily wore a new dress of deep blue calico, and Cade wore his only good shirt, freshly pressed. The gold band he placed on her finger had been his mother's, sent from Texas by his sister when he'd written about his impending marriage. That night, returning to the ranch as husband and wife, Cade carried Lily across the threshold of the cabin that was now truly their home. Setting her down gently, he was struck by her beauty in the soft lamplight and the momentous shift in their relationship. "I meant what I said before," he told her, keeping a respectful distance. "I won't expect anything you're not ready for." Lily stepped closer, placing her hands on his chest. "And if I am ready," Cade's breath caught as she rose on tiptoes, her lips finding his in a tentative kiss that quickly deepened into something more urgent. Years of solitude fell away as he pulled her against him, marveling at how perfectly she fit in his arms. Later, as moonlight streamed through the window, Lily lay curled against his side, her head on his shoulder. "I never expected to find happiness again," she murmured. "After Thomas died, I thought that part of my life was over." "And now?" Cade asked, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "Now I'm thinking about beginnings, not endings." She propped herself up to look at him, her hair falling around them like a curtain. "I want to make this ranch thrive. I want to plant a garden come spring. I want—" She hesitated, a blush spreading across her cheeks. "I want children someday, if you do." Cade tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his heart so full he could barely speak. "I want all of that with you." The seasons turned, and with them, the ranch transformed. Lily's garden flourished, providing vegetables for their table and extra to trade in town. Cade expanded their herd, building a reputation for quality cattle that brought buyers from as far as California. Together, they added 2 rooms to the cabin and furnished them with pieces Cade crafted in the evenings while Lily sewed by the fire. By their first anniversary, Lily's figure had rounded with pregnancy, bringing a new dimension to their happiness. Cade found himself both elated and terrified at the prospect of fatherhood, especially so far from proper medical care. "We should move closer to town until after the baby comes," he suggested one evening as they sat on the porch, his hand resting protectively on her growing belly. Lily shook her head. "This is our home, Cade. Besides, Mrs. Wilkins from the neighboring ranch has delivered dozens of babies. She's already agreed to attend me." "But if something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong," she assured him, covering his hand with hers. "I'm healthy, the baby is strong, and I have a husband who worries enough for both of us." Despite her confidence, when Lily's time came in early spring, Cade found himself pacing outside their bedroom, driven nearly mad by her muffled cries and Mrs. Wilkins's calm instructions. After what seemed an eternity, a new cry pierced the air, high-pitched and indignant. "Mr. Everett," Mrs. Wilkins called, "come meet your daughter." Cade entered to find Lily propped against pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in the softest blanket they owned. "She's perfect," Lily whispered as he sat beside her, peering in wonder at the red-faced infant. "I thought we might call her Rose after your mother." Cade nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He gently touched his daughter's impossibly small hand, marveling when her fingers curled around his. In that moment, his transformation from solitary rancher to family man felt complete. As Rose grew, so did their prosperity. The modest ranch expanded to include more cattle, 2 fine horses, and a reputation for hospitality that made their home a favorite stopping place for travelers. Lily's skilled needlework became sought after in Tucson, providing extra income that they saved for Rose's future. Their second child, a son they named James, arrived 2 years after Rose, with considerably less drama but no less joy. Watching his children play in the yard Lily had coaxed from the desert soil, Cade often reflected on how drastically his life had changed from that fateful day when a desperate widow collapsed on his porch. One evening, as they celebrated their 5th wedding anniversary with a rare bottle of wine from the general store, Cade raised his glass to Lily. "To the best decision I ever made, giving you my bed and my last name." Lily laughed, the sound still capable of warming him to his core. "As I recall, you kept the bed for yourself those first weeks, sleeping on the floor like a martyr." "Worth every backache," he replied with a grin. Later, after the children were asleep, they sat on the porch swing Cade had built the previous summer. The Arizona night was cool and clear, stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky. "Do you ever regret it?" Cade asked, his arm around her shoulders. "Marrying me, staying here in this harsh country?" Lily turned to face him, her expression serious in the moonlight. "How could I regret the life that saved me? Not just from starvation and exposure, but from the emptiness I felt after losing Thomas." She touched his face gently. "You gave me so much more than shelter and your name, Cade. You gave me a reason to live again, to love again." "It's you who gave me the greater gift," he countered, capturing her hand and kissing her palm. "I didn't know how lonely I was until you arrived. We saved each other then," she concluded with a smile. "And built something worth saving," he agreed, gesturing toward their home, solid and welcoming, lights glowing in the windows. From inside came the soft sound of James fussing in his sleep. Lily rose, pressing a lingering kiss to Cade's lips before going to soothe their son. Cade remained on the porch a moment longer, savoring the perfect contentment of the life they'd created together. 5 years earlier, he'd given a desperate widow his bed and his last name, never imagining it would lead to such profound happiness. As he followed his wife inside, closing the door on the wild Arizona night, Cade Everett knew with absolute certainty that he was the most fortunate man in the territory, perhaps in all the West. And Lily, once lost and broken on his porch, now moved through their home with the quiet confidence of a woman who had found not just shelter, but her heart's true home. The gold band on her finger caught the lamplight as she bent over their son's cradle, no longer a symbol of what she had lost, but of everything she had gained. Together, they had transformed tragedy into triumph, loneliness into love, proving that even in the harsh wilderness of the frontier, new beginnings were possible for those brave enough to claim them.